My name's Earl'S, and this is my testimony. My name's Earl'S, and this is my testimony. My name's Earl Crate, and this is my testimony. Hi, my name's Earl'S, and I'm going to give you my testimony about how Jesus Christ saved my life. I grew up in a military home. My mother and father loved each other very much. However, I didn't get to spend as much time as I would have liked with my father. He was gone often doing things. He was on contracts that he couldn't actually discuss with the family. All he could say is, I love you guys, and I'm going away for 6 months, 8 months, however long. My father was a very logical thinker and very direct. He did go to church growing up, and my grandmother and grandfather were believers. However, at a very young age, I think around 3, we moved to a different city, and my dad's ideas of logic and evolution and the things he'd just seen in war had influenced me greatly in my preteen years. When I had gotten into high school, I'd started to rebel and start asking myself bigger questions in life. I was trying to identify myself through sports. Being a Canadian, I was a big hockey player, wanted to play in the NHL. I enjoyed the violence. I enjoyed the thrill of it, I enjoyed the skill level of it, just everything about the sport. And as I was trying to define myself through sports, I realized, I'm never going to go to the NHL, and I wasn't satisfied. I was never truly happy. I could win championships, I could win games, but it never truly satisfied me. So, as any person searching for things in life, purpose, meaning, stuff like that, I started to rebel and just trying different things, anything, everything. I started with girls. I had many girlfriends, and I had even at one point, several points, I had a steady girlfriend who I'd cheat on with many girls. I was a man whore. Terrible. Then I got into drugs. I was doing drugs fairly heavily, and it got to the point where I started then getting into robbing and stealing. I was breaking into people's houses, cars, getting into fights publicly, all kinds of stuff, going into bars at illegal ages. The city I grew up in had a lot of Hells Angels, and I just went in with the wrong crowd. It even got to a point in my high school years, I even became homeless. I'd run away from home, and I was just living at friends' couches, or I was sleeping in abandoned homes, or even on the streets, just sleeping in a park. And then one day, it all changed. A friend of mine, we often had smoked drugs together and so forth. So he took me to somebody's house who we thought was a drug dealer. He wasn't actually, and he was actually quite amused by it, and he invited us into his home, and we just spent the afternoon there doing drugs and just talking, just enjoying each other's company. He wasn't like anybody else I'd really ever met who had done drugs. He actually was extremely educated. He was into art. He had done beautiful paintings that he had all over his house. He loved video games, so we played Mortal Kombat, the most violent game we could find, and played that all night. And he knew about martial arts and philosophy and just all these things. In talking with him, just hanging out that afternoon, I found out that a friend of mine from high school actually was renting a place off him, but he had already graduated, being a few years older, and was off in college. And he was just talking with him, and he was just asking me just confronting questions. Why don't I help you get on social assistance instead of being homeless, and I give you a roof over your head and you stay here. That way I'm happy, you're happy, everybody's happy. And I was actually kind of taken back by that. I was very surprised. So I took him up on the offer, being I was eating at food shelters and wherever I could score a meal, and just started living there. He actually helped me get me back into high school, re-enroll and everything as well too. So while living with this gentleman for several years, one day we were sitting down just getting high, and he had asked me the question, do you believe in God? Does God exist? And I said, no, of course not, man. We evolved from monkeys. Evolution, it's on all the schools, it's in all the textbooks. It'd be a huge conspiracy, or just it doesn't make sense. Like, no. And so he just started asking me simple questions. Look at that stack of quarters over there. How did it get there? Well, somebody put it there. You know, if I took all the parts of your watch and put it into a bag and shook it for 10 million years, would you get a watch again? Well, no, you wouldn't. Someone has to put it together. You know, you breathe out carbon dioxide, trees breathe that in, and trees breathe out oxygen, you breathe it in. So it was just giving me rationale questions. As a rational thinker from my upbringing, it made a lot of sense. I'm like, okay, so there has to be some kind of order. There's an order to everything, so there's had to be someone who had to put things in place. So at this time, he'd given me a King James Bible, Shakespearean Bible. And another thing about me in school too is I was always failing in school. I was 15 to 16 years old, and I was probably at a grade 2 reading level. So when he had given me this Bible, I had said, "You're absolutely nuts. There's no way I can read this. This is written in Old English. I can't do it." So he just said to me, you know, please try it. You know, I know you're going to get it wrong. I know you're going to mess it up, but just do me a favor and just read one chapter a night. And I figured, well, you know, might as well give it a shot. The guy's been so kind and so nice to me. You know, like there's something here that's different. There's something here that makes this man click. I never met anybody with his care or love for anything. He was actually acting out concern, patience, love. He was literally personifying the glory of God, and I didn't even understand what he was doing. The man took me off the streets, essentially helped me learn how to read, and then told me that my purpose in life was to love God, the person who had created me. And no one had ever told me that before. So I gave it a go. And it took me about a span of about probably 3 to 6 months where every night before I went to bed, I tried to read one chapter of the Bible a day. And I just opened it randomly, no particular rhyme or reason. I wasn't focusing on any book. And, you know, the first bit was terrible. I would maybe get like a few words like the, here, you know. And then after a while, those would start sounding it out and getting more words. About halfway through, I started recognizing that, hey, I was actually starting to understand some of these words. By the 6 months, I was actually able to read the chapter and sound out the words and understand things. So I was able to understand even the context of the Old English and how the words are structured and how the sentences are structured. And so then I sat down with him again and we had some more conversations about God. And I started saying to myself, okay, if this God guy is real, I at least owe it to myself to figure out what's the real God. Who's the real thing? There's always a truth, there's a logic to it, right back to that upbringing I had with my dad, who had given me that thinking process. After many years, my friend had decided he wanted to move back home to Toronto with my other friend. So they moved all back home to Toronto, and I was left there in my city, there I was by myself. I had no one really to talk to about this. I wasn't going to a church at all. I was still sinning. I still knew something was wrong with me, but I still had the questions that needed to be answered. So I got into quite a bit more trouble. I got back into my old ways. I was stealing cars and getting into fights. I was getting into my old ways of doing bad stuff. I was dating this girl, and we moved out to the west coast of Canada, into Alberta. And I lived out there in Alberta for several years. Out there I made a ton of money because that's when the oil was really big. I blew all of it, you know, young and dumb, and I just lived out there for many years, not really picking up my Bible and reading, but having enough understanding, thinking that I knew enough. So I was living my life. I wasn't married or anything, I was living with this girl, but I was never satisfied inside. That feeling I had before, I was never, that purpose, I didn't have it. It was gone. It wasn't there. Had work, had jobs, you know, we're living life. But no matter how much sex I had, or how much drugs I had, or how many things I could buy myself, I never felt whole. I felt like there was problems. So one day, I just said to myself, in reflecting on my life, when was the happiest time? What made the most sense? And I started to realize it was the kindness of that man who let me in his house. It was the reading of that book that he had given me, the Bible. So I said to myself, you know what, I'm going to go back to my old ways there, and I'm going to simply just read a chapter a day. And I'm going to pray. And that's going to be it. I'm just going to do that and just see what happens. See if I can get some of that good feeling back, that life where I feel whole, I feel complete. So I started doing this. At the time, my girlfriend, I was off going to school for a couple months in Ottawa. And when she came back, I had been doing this practice for about 2, maybe 3 months. Anyways, one day I was sitting there reading, I think somewhere in the New Testament, and she had come in and she had simply started just getting in my way for no reason at all. Anyways, I just simply stopped what I was doing. I said to her, listen, if you don't mind, just give me 10 minutes. It's all I want is 10 minutes. And she started screaming and swearing at me, saying, flip you and your God. And she just stormed out of the room. I was a little shocked, but, I said what I was going to say, and I just did what I was going to do. So I read my book. I read the Bible, read the chapter, said a prayer, and I went into the next room to see her. Lo and behold, she was in a corner, shaking and shriveling and had cold sweats. So I had no concept of what was going on. Anyways, she got quite upset with me, and after that, she wanted to break up with me. So we broke up. At the time, I wanted to come back home. I wanted to come back to Ontario, so I contacted my friend again. And lo and behold, he had a roommate who was about to move out. And he was running a martial arts school, just like how we were doing before when we were living together. So he needed to have somebody to help him teach. So it's good, I have a job and I have a place to live. So just worked it out that way, where I just came back home about a month or so later. Anyways, when I got back there, I was immediately plugged in with a group of believers who were saved in miraculous ways and were actually just meeting for Bible studies in people's houses. They weren't even necessarily at a particular church. Every of us were just getting on fire for God. We were going out ministering to the poor, to the homeless, feeding them, and just reading about God, praying and fasting, praying and fasting, praying and fasting. I can't put one particular day or event on my salvation. It's been a continuing transforming into perfection. God just doesn't literally save you at one time and then you're done. God is constantly looking at you, loving you. He's a father, constantly grooming you and trying to make you better. And that's why my story took so many years of my conversion, is because God was always there with me the entire way, even when I wasn't looking at him, even when I was mad at him, even when I was doing all those evil, bad things to people. He was always there changing me, reforming me, and now I can say, thankfully, I haven't been in jail in over 2 decades. I haven't touched drugs in many, many years. I have one wife with 5 beautiful children, and I'm surrounded by people who love me, but more importantly, they love the Lord. And He can save your life too.
If you can pray for someone watching this right now, whoever it is, when it comes to what you've been through, and if you want to share something on your heart, what would it be?
Persistence. Persistence. The Lord, even though I would wane and go off my own ways, I pray that just know that God's persistence, He won't leave you. He won't reject you. He accepts you as you are, and it's His work that He's done that saves you. All you have to do is believe in Him. And when you hold tight to that, He will start changing you, and you will start transforming into a different person. And just know that God is chastening you, and that He hasn't left you. He really hasn't. We're the only person that's ever left Him. My name's Earl, and this is my testimony.